Hey guys, I hope stream is running, I guess. So, at least showing something. So, today, kind of a new thing is going on. I want to be taking you on a trip to generating Swagger, but not using Swashbuckle UI, but to use PowerShell and .NET framework tooling to generate it. So we need to hit a couple of things here. So first of all, I will try to do it with ASP.NET Core 8, the new one. I probably won't do it with minimal APIs, which I still don't like. Just opinionated. Huh. As always, because it's a live stream, I'm going to do this in a more, general way. So mistakes will happen, stuff like that. So if you are annoyed by something I'm doing, just hit me in the chat. So the target will be that we have a reusable PowerShell, which I will share with you, so you don't have to write everything down or something like that. Of course, I will share this with you. And this PowerShell lets you use or lets you have Swagger generation later in an automated way. So you might ask, why would I do that? So what do I have there? So basically, the point here is that most of you probably know the Swagger JSON view or Swagger JSON based view in Swashbuckle or in /Swagger endpoints, where you have this nice UI and you can test out your APIs. This is based on a JSON file, which is generated actually, and then it's reading the JSON file and displaying this UI. So that's not what we are so interested in today. The point is that this Swagger JSON is kind of the documentation of your API, and there are a bunch of tools out there where you can take this JSON and put it into, and then those tools will do useful stuff with that. And sometimes you need that in automated processes, like for instance in CI/CD pipelines. So there's a tool in Azure, for instance, which is called API management, and there you can centralize kind of, or you have a portal, centralized portal for all your APIs, which is kind of useful if you have a Kubernetes cluster and running microservices around, and then you want this single point of information, what APIs are running in which version and so on. So, in order to automatically update those tools, it's probably a good idea to have the Swagger generated during a CI/CD pipeline and then hand it over. Turns out it's not so easy to do that. It's actually easy, but you have to find the way. And that is what we're going to explore today together. So, if you're interested in, I'm happy. If not, maybe you watch it later, or maybe this meets you on a later point in time, so then you obviously cannot chat with me. And with that, I will share my screen. So you should now see my screen. And I will go ahead and start this process. So as I said, in order to start all that, we need an API. And in this evening session, I will generate an API with you, a simple one, but it will have some decent configuration, I hope. And it will explain you where this documentation comes from, which is kind of miraculous to some people, and how you get not only a simple API, but maybe a versioned API, where you have like version 1, version 2, version 3, and they live separately like single APIs in order to be backwards compatible. So that's what I'm going to show too, in a simple way, of course, and there are a lot of optimizations possible, but still, okay, it's a valid point. So we will start simply by .NET New, web API, and let's call it the sample API, and I'm in the wrong folder. Let's go to my, see, it's already starting. E coding, that's exactly where I will be. So just one hint here, which is maybe interesting, and I have my live session, so I can do whatever I want. So I generated this dev drive, which is now part of Windows. If you didn't know, it's there. You can generate a dev drive here, which actually is a drive which has the REFS file system. I don't know what this actually in particular means, but it's obviously good. Anyways, what it also does, and I didn't check it, I just heard it. It's a VHD which is kind of a split apart from your hard drive. And this thing is like automatically detached from your antivirus, which is pretty nice because it gives you a lot more performance and hopefully stops those annoying stuff messages, for instance, in Writer. If you want to take it out of the antivirus process and you click yes and it's not happening and it asks you again, stuff like that. Anyways, here .NET New Web API dash name is API sample. Let's do it. So this is now using, obviously, let's see, API sample. Yeah, this is using .NET 8 because I .NET dash dash I installed it. I have 7.6, 3, and even 2 on my machine for different reasons. But this is kind of new because this week was .NET Conf and they released .NET 8 now in the final version. So with this also comes a new Visual Studio, which I might use today, but I'm not going into details here. So anyways, here we are, and this is like the plain old thing. Let's open this in Visual Studio actually, API sample CS project, and give Visual Studio a minute to get its stuff together. So as you can see, Visual Studio didn't change dramatically. What we now have by default, which was already there, is this Endpoints Explorer thing, which might be kind of interesting. Let's see, he already detected it. The GET request of this weather forecast sample is already there. And you can basically, maybe I show this later, because this will fail right away when we put versioning in. It doesn't understand versioning yet, as far as I know. But we can trick a little bit and then we can use this in order to see if our requests are running. But this is not in the core of today's sample. So, interestingly enough, he already adds this and he does minimal API. Yeah, of course. So right away, I don't like it. Don't save. I hate it already. I don't like minimal API. If you didn't know, now you know. Let's do RMRF API sample. What? Why not? RMRF API sample cannot access this file. Why? Interesting. Here you go. Visual Studio again. Let's do a new terminal. Maybe it's in its own way. cdd coding, e-coding. Going on. So is it still there? RMR API sample force, please. It's being used by another process. Like it. So is Visual Studio holding it? I don't know. So I will create a new one, .NET New, but for this web API, we need the -h to see if we can use controllers. So it's -n API sample app now, obviously, and then use controllers, please. cd API sample app, which is ours, and then let's see, looking better, having a controller folder, and then API sample app. Sample API, sample app, C, exactly. So we will see if at some point in time I get control over my hard drive back. We will see that. Yeah, no commands so far in the chat. So basically everybody's pretty much curious what I'm going to do. So first of all, I delete this weather forecast because we don't need actual data here. And I will just remove all of this stuff, get rid of the logger. We also don't need a logger here. Visual Studio is kind of freaking out because it's loading all my tools here. Copilot is complaining, don't do it. By the way, I'm getting more and more nerved by Copilot. I don't know how you feel about it. Maybe tell me that. So then what we're going to do is we will add a method here, which is simply an action result, maybe only an iAction result, get, and this is HTTP get by what is it? Let's say get date. And this is just a sample controller, please. I just want to get rid of this weather API annoying thing. Sample controller, API controller, very nice. Don't do that. Just return OK. That's basically it. And then maybe datetime offset now. And if we return something like that, we should have an action result of datetime offset for whatever reason. So here we go. And we gave it a name, and sure enough, let's check the properties because we don't want IIS, it's still here. We don't want HTTP, HTTPS only, and IIS is not needed as a profile. Just clean up a little bit. This will run then on no thank you, just one port. Keep things simple. It will launch the browser, okay, for the moment. And then what we should see when we run this, it should run. So on the /Swagger endpoint, it should kind of open up. Diagnostic tools are coming up. Let's close them. Let's do this here. And now you can see the sample kind of, I will probably leave this open now for the moment. This is my trick doing it. Is it closing the browser? Yes, sir. And then I will say launch browser false. And so this ensures that next time I run it, the browser is not opening, everything is good. Next thing, which is kind of important for us right now, is looking into this file. So this gets very important, the C's project file. So first of all, you know, this is the naive way of doing it. And if we leave it here, so everything is kind of straightforward and all the tooling I show you later will just happily work. But you know, let's do it a little bit more complicated. Let's say that actually the assembly name, so meaning the file which is generated after all, should be API sample app, but it's in service core, and the namespace should be, for some reason, coding freaks dot API sample app dot service core. So this is kind of a usual behavior. You have a namespace with including a company name, and then you have this one. So now what is interesting later, when we generate an API documentation, how it's generated, in which file is it generated. We come to that later. Let's check the NuGet packages now, and let's see if we are on the newest track. So as you can see, we're not. So Swashbuckle is already updated in 6.4.5.0. It comes a little bit old from the template. No, just upgrade this, please. And now we have the latest Swashbuckle, but turns out that this is not enough right now. So what we need is, we need the ability, because that's what I want to set up with you here in my setup thingy. Let's do this. Oh, no. Let's remove all of this shit. Oh, I said the word loud, sorry. So this is our startup. And what I want to do with you is I want to generate like the versioned API here. So what does it mean? When we look here currently in our Swagger, it only has one version, version 1, which is not what we want, because normally when you deploy an API, what you want to have is you will start with version 1 or something like that. And then whenever there's a breaking change, you have the ability to generate version 2 so that everything which is targeting the current version is not affected by that change and still can access your API on version 1 as long as you provide it. That is what we're going to achieve here. So we do that by, first of all, adding packages, manage NuGet packages. And here comes a new thing. If you're, you probably saw it at the warnings. So there was an old package. Let me see, I just made a note. Versioning API. It's first of all versioning Microsoft Open API and then versioning. So you see here, this is the old package. It's outdated. Like it tells you that you should use this package now, ASP.NET versioning MVC, instead of this old package here. And this is true for Web API versioning, which is now versioning web API, and so on, so on. So what we need is, by the way, we need the API Explorer package here, because this is API Explorer always means Swagger is, or it's generating stuff for Swagger too. So this thing should then be this thing, the new one, and this guy with this symbol is now having a dependency already to the versioning MVC. So the new one of .NET 7 and newer. So we will install this guy here. And now we need to configure some stuff. So now we are kind of ready, kind of ready in terms of the CS project file. Currently, it will yell at us because this namespace, or should yell at us because this namespace is not correct. It should be coding freaks API sample dot services dot core. Or what did we do? What was it? Service core, and it's not happy, not at all. Assembly name, this is root namespace. Root namespace, I think it's this way. And now it's not getting happier. Let's see, let's double check. And he still wants us to be in. You see, API samples, I don't know why. Because this is basically correct, this one. But let's see in a minute. Let's rebuild this thing, maybe. Build succeeded. It's strange here, but I had this lately. Does it have implicit usings? Let's see. Maybe we should not do that. And then he's getting... now we see what's going on. So implicit usings would say, you don't need this, but I want you to see that, okay? So, okay, nice. So far, so good. Next step now is that we want him to generate the Swagger documentation. So what this means is, first of all, we need to go here and say something. Retrieves the current server time in UTC, whatever. So this is really helpful. The server time. And then what we usually say here, because we're nice, produces something like application JSON, which is just, you know, I know it's by default, but, you know, better be explicit on stuff like that. Nice. So first of all, let's see if this is visible. If we run this, no, what is going on? Web application, yes. He does not know where it is now, and now it should run. So when we execute it now, and refresh our page, it is not showing any additional stuff. That is because of two reasons. The first reason is that we didn't tell him to generate the documentation file, which is pretty easily doable by just saying generate documentation file. And this is true, I think. Not enabled, but anyways. If we now build this thing, okay, and now we go here and we ls bin debug, because that's what we're doing, .NET 8. What we should see is that there is this file now generated, the API Explorer core XML, which is a file which is generated. It has nothing to do in the first place with Swagger, but Swagger or Swashbuckle, in fact, will use this file if we tell him to do so, to generate the Swagger documentation, or let's say to add our Visual Studio based or C# based summaries to the documentation, which is pretty nice. So in order to do that, we need to configure a little bit of stuff here. So we already have Swagger again in place, but this is not enough. So what we need to do is we need to tell Swagger again a little bit more. So we go here to, I don't know, options inside of Swagger again. And now we tell him, you know what, it's not the default stuff. So what we need is, there is, let's say, XML docu file thingy, which is kind of the pattern. Hey, assembly, let's use a little bit of reflection. Yes, get executing assembly, because we are in this thingy, and then get the name, which is not the name, it's an assembly name, which is a structure. And then here, what we have is the name of it, and then .xml. This is what it should be. Why? Because we told him in the, is it this one? We told him that this will be the assembly name, and as we saw here, he's taking this assembly name, which we give him, .xml, and this is now our XML file. That is why we just built the file like it is. So next thing is, there is an include XML commands thingy, where we can path combine, and this is very important, the base directory of our app. Where do we start from? This is bin debug net8, for instance. And then we will add the XML file, the XML docu file name, which we had, and then he should find it there. Good. So let's see now what happens. If I start this API now, those 2 lines of first should be sufficient. And I go here. What you can see now is, now our commands from C# are arriving here. So whatever is going on. And it says, what else does it say here? Application JSON is what it is. Example value schema, that's example. And then we can try it out, execute, and then we have the 200, and that's it. So no models are explained here, only that. I think we also can control this guy. I'm not 100% positive. Let's try out. The controller can have a summary too, and it should have one. Provides just sample endpoints. Let's say this is what it is. Try it out again. Let's see. Thank you. F5 this one. No, it's not. It's not having here. It's just sample. It's not displaying. I think you can control it, but anyways, this is sufficient. This is interesting because now this is part of this Swagger JSON. Let me go there and show you. This is the Swagger JSON. This has nothing to do with .NET. This is what Swashbuckle generated for us, the package, which is an official format. And this thingy is kind of understood by a lot of tools. Okay, this is like the lingua franca, if you will, for APIs, API descriptions. And it has one path. A path is like endpoints, and it's private and get, it's tagged by sample, and so on. It has an operation ID, by the way, which is interesting, but we will come to that later. Okay, cool. So now it works for the moment. So now let's go over, let's close this controller for a second, and let's go over, and I told you about API versioning. So this is what I will put in, and this is what makes this talk a little bit risky, because I'm doing it with the new packages. So we need the service configuration at API versioning. Here it is. It's good. And then we need options for that too. So now this API versioning comes into place. And what we say is the default API version should be something. So what I want to show you is how you can configure this more dynamically. So in order to do that, I will do this here with a variable and support it. Just made some notes. That's why I'm looking to the right side so that I'm not getting distracted too much. It's a new array. No, thank you. It's a new array of new API version. And this is something, this structure comes from the NuGet package. So this is obviously supported. You just give it, for instance, there's one constructor where you can say 1.0 is my first version, and then another one, which is new API version 2.0. Let's say we support 2 versions right away, which is kind of strange. But anyway, so what we can do now is, here, we just say supported versions first. So this is what we give them here as the default version in the options. That's why I did it. So then there's an option which is called assume default version when unspecified, which should be true. So if somebody omits the version, it should point to 1.0 in this case. That's good. Please report the API versions. Do that. And please, there is a version API version reader thing, which you can say API version reader, where is it, dash combine. And what you can give it now is the new URL segment version reader. Then add the new header API version reader. There it is. And please add also the new media type API version reader. So this is now saying that it could be all of that. It can come from the URL, it can come from a header, or it can come from a media type description. So all of those possible segments or parts of a request can control which version is meant. So that's kind of nice. You're not bound to put it in the path. You can put it in the header, for instance. So now we have those versions. What now makes sense is to, now what I do, at least, it makes sense for me. I usually add a folder saying version 1, and my sample controller here goes now into version 1. And I go here, and first of all, he moved it to the namespace version 1, which is good, because now when I have a breaking change, I can copy version 2, or create a copy and call it version 2, and put another sample controller in it, which is uniquely named by having it in its namespace. So I can have a breaking change sample controller and add it there. So what I also can do now is I can go here and say API version supported by this one is 1.0. So kind of saying it starts to be visible. This type, this controller, should be visible from version 1.0 on. And then I could say it should also be visible in 2.0 or not. I can do the same on methods. You will see that later. I can do the same thing and restricting which methods should be available in which version. Anyways, we are not quite done yet. So we did it in at API versioning. But now what we also want to do, we want to tell him, you know what, API Explorer, I want this to be in Swashbuckle in Swagger 2. So, and in order to do that, what we do is we tell him, you know what, first of all, the group format for my version, and this is kind of strange. It's kind of in this way. This is what I always do. I cannot remember exactly what it is, but what it actually does is that in the URL, the version is v1. And it's up to three places. So it will have v1 to up to v999 for whatever reason. And then what I also can do is substitute API version in URL, and I usually set this to true. This is kind of self-explaining, but we will see. So I have this in place. And then what I also a lot of times do in the use Swagger UI thingy here, I add another thing, which is again options, and I have to read it there. And what I do is I generate a so-called description provider as app.services.getRequiredService. So you go back to your DI and get a service, and then you say this is called an API version. Is it the version provider? No, it's a version description provider. So all of this, by the way, is here. I need the version description provider, please. That's what I get now from, hopefully, from the DI. And then what I can do is for each the descriptions in description provider dot API version descriptions. So please cycle through all the descriptions which you got, dear provider. And then with that, what we can do is, hey, Swagger endpoint, which is usually /Swagger/ and then please put in the description dot group name, which is the number /Swagger.json. This is, I'm doing that. Swagger endpoint. Oh no, it needs another option, as I see here. and it is the group name itself. Group name is a version name, but to upper invariant, because I want it to be a capital V. That's, I think, what I'm doing here, if I remember correctly. So what I do is I ensure that every version I provisioned, version 1, version 2, has its own Swagger JSON generated on a specified endpoint. That's very important, so that, you know, this later gets translated and I don't have mixed up versions everywhere. So with that, I'm pretty positive that we're done with Swagger finally. And let's see if it works. So first of all, it should build, which would be a good idea, nice idea. It looks good, no build errors so far. Now let's refresh it, and now you can see here all of this is happening. First of all, watch here. So Swagger is under V1. Let's do it green. Here, V1, this is what we just did, the location of the Swagger JSON. That's what we did. Also, we have a capital V1 version, and we can change the capital if you want to, and if you like the lowercase more, you can just to upper invariant, you can remove that. I like it this way. Okay, nice. And then we have under this our sample request, which is kind of, when we try it out, it gives you the URL, where is it, which is wrong. He just did it because we have just one version. If we go to version 2, and it says version 2 is 404, and this is strange because it should be there. Interesting. So he's not generating version 2. Why is that? Let me see, what did I do wrong? It has both versions and everything should be fine. So that is interesting already. So what I will do maybe is just force it to say get only date, whatever, get only date, and then I will say date only, the nice date type where we don't have from datetime now. And let's see if this is working. I don't even know if date only is serializable server date and server date without UTC. So let's see what happens if we tell him this should be there in version 2, but not in version 1. Is that even possible? Let's see. Let's do this here. So this method should be in both versions, but this should be only in version 2. This is not a breaking change. That's why I'm doing it in one controller. Let's see if this works. F5 this. This is, we only have /sample this, and then here we again get v2 Swagger JSON. It's not generated. So something is odd here. So did I forget something is the question. API versions in, I think yes, I forgot something. I see it here. It's a mess, but we are through with that in a second, I promise. So in the Swagger again, here, I forgot to do something. What I forgot is that for each var version in supported API versions, I need to tell him to actually generate, this is Swagger generator options, and this thing, Swagger docs add, this is the thing I need to do. And now I need to tell him where it is. Version.major version will be the path. And then what I also give him is a new OpenAPI info. And in that I will give him some hints, which is, let's see, title is Coding Freaks Demo API. That's good. What else do we have? Version, again, is, and now we can build how we want, lowercase, which is the API version that, no, the version that we had, dot, no questions so far. And I swear we're coming to PowerShell in a minute. Bear with me, guys. I hope you're still having fun. Contact could be something like new OpenAPI contact. There's a lot of stuff. You should read Swashbuckle. OpenAPI contact, which is another structure coming, which, you know, something like URL could be something like, oh, it needs to be URI, new URI. Can you read it, by the way? Let me zoom. And this is HTTPS, of course, coding freaks DE. So something like that, and description could be there too. Let's add it. Demo API for the screencast, whatever. Okay, let's try this now and let's see if we get rid of the error. So we do this for every supported version of our array. So this is for each loops, 2 of them, so that if you have a centralized configuration where which tells everything about which version you support, then you cannot forget to add it. You know, that is pretty cool. So now we have version 1, version 2, it's still having errors, 500s, but it should give hopefully an error here somewhere. Diagnostic tools, is it giving us? Show events, no. Do we see something in the output? Yeah, here it is. Conflict method. So conflicting method path is get sample for actions. This is telling us that something in our controller, this is typical stuff, is not quite okay. Get only date and get date. So I don't know where this comes from. Let me see. If I let him generate this by himself, is he yelling at us right away when we go to version 2? Let's see. This is always what distracts me. Let's see. At 5, version 1 is fine, version 2 is not. And this is now HTTP GET. That's why I gave him this. This is basically get day and get time. Shouldn't be a problem. 2 gets, different methods. API version only 2, which is nice. No hot reload on APIs as far as I know. Checking the chat. Let's see if I can make it work. Now it's working for whatever reason. So we have get time, and in version 2 we have get day. Let's execute get day. Let's see if it's working. 400. I think this is JSON not being able to do it. Let's see if this works. This works. And now the only thing which makes me a little bit nervous is that he's not going to generate v2 as the curl pattern here. So in the request URL, this is quite not correct. And we needed to fix that. But, you know, for the moment, it should be okay now. Because I want you to leave here and now go over to the tooling. Interesting. But this response thingy, the 400, which basically says bad request, I don't see how I can do a bad request here, but let me guess. If we change this to datetime, oh no, oh, maybe this way. Maybe this is actually now actually checking the type. Let's see. Execute. No, I think date only is not his favorite thing. Let's do datetime here. What's happening? And then datetime now. Without this one, and it's still time, I know, but you know, it's not UTC. Let's see. F5 thingy, version 2, try it out, execute. 400. That's interesting. It's not get day. Where's the 400 coming from? Any ideas? Maybe in the chat. Output. What is he telling us? Do we see diagnostic tools? I don't want to go into deep here, but I'm very interested where the 400 comes from. HTTP get day. Nice. API version 2. It is saying, and by the way, I think that needs to be this way. Possible? Yes, no? Let's see. Is it this way or 1.0? I'm not sure. Is he playing with us or is he right away yelling? So this is that. Let's try this out. Execute. Is he now having... No, he's not. And now, what about the 400? Still 400. 400. What is going on? Why is it 400? Interesting. I think I need to put in 2.0 again. What is 400 here? Nothing needs to be passed in. It's a public actual result of datetime. Get only date. So something is still odd and it needs to be fixed. Get only date, get date and get UTC date. Let's do it. Get local date and let's call it get UTC date and get local date. I'm curious what's going on. So F5 this, and is he doing it? Yeah. And can I execute this? I totally can. And can I execute this? I totally cannot. And I get an error response 400 for whatever reason. Is it going away when I add this to both APIs? Question mark. Has it something to do with version 2 only? Let's see. F5 for, oh yeah, now it's in both of them. Can I execute it on, yeah, it's working on version 1. But if I switch to version 2, it kind of works too. Get local date, get UTC date. Is this now working? Now everything is working. Kind of when I remove it from one version, it's not working again. Because the thing is not part of the version. So I forgot to put it in. And first of all, I forgot to put here X API version as the header name, by the way, just to complete my sample. So, and the media type version reader 2. Was that the reason? Let me see. Report API versions true. This is all okay. Let me check my notes if I have something missed. No, it's kind of okay. This needs to be, where was my version thingy? This is true. Let's try again, and it's still currently not part of the URL, but with that we will go over and maybe I find the issue later. Let's F5 this, try out, and this is now the header, which I can optionally set, and this is what I did. Try out execute. Nice, I'm on version 1. What happens if I do to version 2? XAPI version 2. Okay, interesting. So at least he's working, but you get the idea. We need to find out what's going on. So now we can stop thinking about generating this thing, but let us see where we are. Right now, what we have is, when we look into this folder, what we have is, we have the DLL, which is coding free API sample. We have this DLL, which is important. And we have this file, which is important because it contains the things which are used to generate the documentation here. So that is what we have. We have PDBs, which we don't need here to be seeing, app settings for the configuring stuff, and the NuGet package-based libraries. So that's cool. And now our simple task is, can we somehow generate the Swagger JSON, which is not automatically there, as you have seen. The Swagger JSON is generated when you run the application. It goes through the program, and all of this here is somehow generating, by using the XML commands and so on, it is generating this JSON file, hosting it, and when you stop the app, this disappears. So it's just an endpoint which delivers JSON. Cool. So what we need to do now is we need to find out, can we generate it somehow? And it turns out, let me copy a link. I have to sneeze. Thank you. Copy link address. And what we need to find out here is, where is it? Here. And I just copied it over. There is, turns out, on GitHub, you can see it, and I will have the link later in the video. There is, from Swashbuckle, an ASP.NET Core CLI. So CLI always is a good thing when we want to automate stuff, and it says that using the tool with the .NET Core 2.0 SDK, no thanks, with 3.0 or later, thank you. So what you should do is this thing. So you should generate a tool manifest. If you don't know what that is, A .NET tool manifest is a file, we will see that right away, which you should have in place if your project is depending on some .NET tools like .NET EF or whatever in a certain version, and you want to be independent from the globally installed tools on a machine. You can totally do .NET new tool manifest. Let me show you what it does. You search for a folder, which is this one with a project, and .NET new tool dash manifest, which is a built-in command, right? So if you execute that, he says the template .NET local tool manifest was created. So in other words, this is just a template from .NET new. What it does is there is one new thing. This is this here. This came into place. So when we try to cat the .config, it will tell us you cannot do it because it is a directory. It's not a file. So we need to ls the .config to see what it is, and it has one file. So what we do is we want to see this file, and this is just a JSON file, and this is just telling you this is a .NET tool manifest file. It's just there, you do it once per project, and it has no tools installed. But now with that in place, what you can do, as they claim, you can simply do this one, and I will omit the version to just get the latest. So .NET tool install, and then you go to Swashbuckle ASP.core CLI and will grab from, I think, NuGet. It will search there and find the Swashbuckle ASP.core CLI tool. Let's do it. And now we did it, and now let's cat the file again, and then that's what it did. It installed 650 from the source, and it now registers a command, Swagger, which means inside of this folder we can execute this command Swagger, which we couldn't do before, because this is what the .NET tool kind of installed. It's like you have a new command, but only inside of this folder, because we didn't install it with the -G, which means you have a global tool installed and you have only one version on your machine. And then it might break on older projects when you open them, and then, oh no, the new tooling is not compatible. So this way you can have the version bound to your project. Okay, and then you have some help, but in the end what it is this one. So you can say .NET Swagger to file, then you define the output, so the JSON file. You say which assembly, which is your DLL, and then you tell him what version of the Swagger document do you want to generate. So what this is, first of all, because this is saying startup assembly, you need it to be built beforehand. Okay, we did this already. So what we can do is a Swagger, output to swagger.json in this directory, and then simply, now the assembly name, okay, use go to bin debug.net and then go to API sample services core DLL. This is my assembly. This is where my startup is in. And then use version 1. And then it does something. And then we have, or we don't have, what is it? Commands. Oh, I forgot to file. Sorry guys, to file. And he says .NET Swagger to file. And he says, what is he saying? Startup assembly, relative path to the application startup assembly, name of the Swagger you want to retrieve as configured in your startup class. Yeah, v1 normally. And let's do none of this. Okay, it's not doing it. What am I missing? -- output? Yeah, I need to say -- output. I think there is, yeah. No abbreviation possible, so my mistake was -o. And now -- output should have generated a Swagger JSON, which when we look at this is now a JSON file, which has the documentation for my 2 versions, and in every version are 2 methods, and you can see here how the paths are, and you should also have the summary in place, which, as we know, came from the documentation. So this tool reads both files. It kind of executes everything, and then knows that this documentation file is in place, and he will totally do it. But he will only export version 1, which is pretty important he will not export version 2, because that's exactly what we have, what we want to have. Because when in all the tools, so basically this would be a better name for this, version 1, and then you would add version 2 for version 2, right? So version 2 JSON, and now what you have got are two versions, two JSON files, and one is for version 1, one is for version 2, because normally they would be different. That's good to know. Because now with this file, let's say in the CI or CD pipeline, you can now work because it's now independent from every stuff. You would copy it over and import it somewhere nice. So, and that is what I'm going to build a script for now, which we will build right in this folder. And for that, I will go to VS Code in this folder, and I'm just going to create a new file so that we see everything, and then generator ps1, and with that we will start. Now I will zoom a little bit to show everything, and now we need to automate this process, and this is what I wanted to show you so that you understand. Let's remove this, that you understand how you could do it and to help you a little bit. So let's write some pseudocode, which is the steps we're going to take. So first things first, as we saw, on the machine we are running, because the .config is part of our source code, but we don't know if everything is already installed, right? So first thing first, make sure that the CLI is present. This is what we need to ensure on a machine. Nice. So next thing, what we need to know is, because when we generate the script, we don't want it to be dependent on this project only. So we want to have an automation which works on every project. This means determine assembly name for the project. This is not an easy task, and I will show you that later. So next thing is, so basically the next thing then is to test if the settings of the projects file are actually okay. So I will show you that. Let's do this for a moment, and then at the end generate the Swagger using the above. So let's go step by step. That's what we're going to do. So first things first, we want to ensure that the .NET tooling is in place. So in order to do that, let's generate a function so that we can have a little bit more structure here, a PowerShell function. And I will call this function install .NET tooling. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I show you why I name it that way, because this is a commandlet syntax. And there's just one tip. You can go over to PowerShell. If you want to write a little bit more professional PowerShell stuff, you can go here. And I always look for approved verbs. There it is. And the approved verbs is from Microsoft a list of verbs in certain groups. Verbs are the first part before the dash. You can use without colliding potentially with other stuff. So I checked that install is a thing here. So install dash something would be a good verb. But if you would write, because I have the PowerShell tooling installed here, let's say something like that, it will warn you to tell you this is not an approved verb. So that's why I don't use it. I just want to have clean PowerShell scripts too. So let's start by saying, my config path would be in PowerShell string concatenation, the PowerShell working directory. So wherever we are in currently, not the script root. So maybe if you don't know what the difference is, the PWD is wherever your cursor is currently in the PowerShell session. So that is different from where your script is stored. So this script generator PS1 is in that API sample app, but PWD would be the thing where my actual shell is in, the current folder. So let's say we know that if there is a file, which is a .config .NET tools JSON, if this file is present, let's make a variable. This is exactly this file, right? This is what I'm pointing to, because whenever you do .NET new tool manifest, you know that this file is generated in exactly this file. So what we do is, if this path does not exist, if this does not exist, this means we need to install the manifest. And we know how this works. We just are nice people and we just write an output for ourselves, creating .NET tool manifest. This is what we do. And I don't know. And I always like to know new line here. You will see it in a minute. And then we say .NET new tool dash manifest. We execute it. And what we do most of the times is we out null this, meaning I don't want to see any output on this operation, because now I can just pretend that I do miraculously stuff, and I just say done. Okay, and then in the end, all I do is here, I just say, you know what, install .NET tooling. I call this method, it does not need any parameter whatsoever. So now let's open a terminal here so that we can test this stuff out. I'm in this thing, and you have to imagine now this function is like a method, and this is like the thing which gets executed when it runs. He will never execute PowerShell the function. It works a little bit like JavaScript and stuff, like scripting engines. He searches for the first non-functional block and then starts to execute everything in order, and this one then is going there. Okay, so all we need to do is, in a PowerShell, and I am in PowerShell, I need to generate a PS1, and what he says is nothing. So, but what happens if I remove this file, and then I execute generator, and he says creating .NET tool manifest, and this way I can ensure that there is a .NET tool manifest. But what I need to do now is, if we know that now the tool manifest is there, only now we can execute another thing, which is write host, ensuring Swashbuckle CLI, no new line. I always like this. And now what we can do is .NET tool install without -g. This is important. Swashbuckle ASP.NET core.cli. And I again out null this so that I don't see any output of that. And when this happened, I'm doing .NET done. So now this should be executed in any case, but this only needs to be done once if the manifest is not there. So with that, let's execute it. So let's execute it again, and it turns out you can execute it as often as you want, which is nice. He always, and this makes it easier, we don't need to check if it's already in here. He don't create a second one. He doesn't create a second one. I'm just doing it, and I could do the version here too. So maybe I would say --version 650, because this is what I tested it with in order to assure that no other version is there. That's why they put it in the documentation here. And they are doing 6502, so let's add this now too. And let's ensure that we always end up with the same version no matter when the script runs. Okay? So, and this could be a parameter, whatever. But this now is kind of stable, and this is what this does. Cool. So, let's head over to another task, which is let's find out what the name of our assembly is. So this sounds easy, but remember, we don't know in which folder we will run the script later. It could be any assembly name whatsoever. So what we need to do is pretty simple. Let's do another function, which is called get-assembly. First of all, the file name, okay? So this is our first task to find out what is the file. So this is kind of easy. Result equals get child item, which is like the ls. We search for a file, not a folder or something, and our filter is CS project. Again, I think, oh yeah, search in the current directory, not elsewhere. So when the result is not null or whatever, if the result, no, piped to measure object, okay, and if this count equals, don't do equals 0. So what this means here, this line of code, kind of, is we found at least one CSproj file. So this is what you do with measure object, okay? So you just take something, let me show you. Let's do ls, which is get child item, it's just an alias. Let's do get child item dot CSproj, which is the shorthand version of what I did. This is what it is. And now you do measure object, and what you get is this, and then you put it in parentheses and say, give me the count of that, and this is 1. This is how you can count, and you are doing this measure object thingy because you want to ensure that you're not acting on a string which also have a count, which then would be the amount of characters, because PowerShell is not really type safe at the end. So if there's an exception or something weird going on, you will get a string, and then this will have a count too. Anyways, so this says at least 1, but that's not what we're going to check. What we want to say is there, this is like the C# version of single. So if the count is not equaling 1, this means we found 0 or more than 1 CSproj file, which is strange in one folder. We don't want to see that. And because it's strange, we make our life easier, and we say none or more than 1 project file found. So that is, we throw an exception. That's enough. We cannot handle this situation. That's what we say. Otherwise, we just return the file, the result. So, and what we can do here is, we now, because we're returning, we can tell him here that the assembly file name would be get assembly file name. That's it. And now the good thing about it, we can say write host found assembly file name, because we can write it here, because if something goes wrong, the get assembly file name method or function will throw an exception. So being in line 27 actually means it was found and there was a file. There were no 0 files. So basically what we know now is we are in a folder, pwd is in a folder where a C's project exists. And we know the name of this C's project, which is actually a nice thing to know. So let's see, when we execute it again, he's ensuring Swashbuckle, done. And then he says, I found an assembly file, add there. Thank you for that. So that's a good news. But now let's come to the hardest part of our story. So let me explain why I say that. So I always have, ignore. I always had struggled to understand that totally, but now I hopefully are through here. So what you see here is you just tell them, hey, generate a documentation file. Well, okay, this takes the assembly name and generates the file. However, there is one opportunity which is saying, and I will copy that, which is might be this one. So this is another thing to do that, and that could be anything. What if you want to generate a documentation file, but you want it to be in a specified folder? So let's say I'm doing bin/docs/ and then takes a configuration, takes the target framework, and then takes the assembly name .xml. For whatever reason, this is what you do. Or let's say you stick with this folder and you just say, let's do docs so that you can see what happens. So if I run .NET Build, because remember, the CSproj file is only interesting for .NET Build. Nobody else is interested in this file. This is actually literally a file which controls the MS Build at the end. So the .NET Build program will run MS build with certain options which are configured in the C project files. Whatever .NET built this thingy. So let's see what happens. He will hopefully run the build. Why is it taking? Okay. ls. So where are we? Bin, net, bin, doc. There it is. He generated a docs folder. He was listening to us. Then the configuration is debug, right? And then the next thing we said, target framework, net 8. Okay. And then what we see here is he now put the file to this folder. Now the file is not anymore in bin. And to prove that we are now in trouble, rmrf the bin folder, totally, it's gone. .NET, and now let's run our program again. So he should now listen to this line. Let's run it again. And let's see if we are having trouble. I'm not sure actually, but let's see. Do we have trouble already? No. He knows, he understands that, because this is where he searches for the file. But let's see if this actually is true. Wait a second. I don't want him to trick me, okay? So I know that this file is there. The question is, did he trick me by bin here? Yeah. He did that, okay? This totally got generated too. So why is that? This is because, and I don't get the point obviously still, because this is still in place. So this thing takes whatever is here and ignores totally what is here. And this thing is kind of the old way to say documentation file generated. This wasn't there before. This is the shortcut to always use the assembly name. Interesting. So now let's do it again. Let's rmrf the bin folder. What the hell is going on? rmrf bin. Why? Yeah, that's why rm-r bin-force. Again, access denied. Where is it? It's interesting, by the way, guys. I don't know what is in the way of deleting it. Interesting. rmrf bin. Can you please? That's interesting. Because rmrf is an alias. What is it? Swagger UI DLL. Is it running? Oh, I'm an idiot. That's why. Okay. Now it's gone. And now I remove, remember, I removed this generate documentation file. So let's execute this and let's see if we have a documentation file now. Because I guess no. Because now it's still working. That's weird. It's still working. That is even more weird than I thought. Swagger. Version 1, version 2. Thank you. But kind of, you know, it's messed up. But let's see. Did he generate the file, the ls, in the original file? Yeah, he still generates it. Although I told him not to do it. That is strange. That is very, very strange. So he generates with that now the file in 2 folders, which does not make life easier, because watch what's happening. And I don't know even .NET, no, Swagger 2 file. And now let's see if he can generate this file. He can, but there are possible ways where he cannot generate it, especially if you go to .NET 6 and .NET 7. He will not generate this for you because he says, I cannot find the file. So the reason for that is, and maybe I can prove this later to you in a .NET 6, we will see. The reason for that is that .NET 7 and 8 are behaving differently with these switches, and we don't want to run into risk because we still have plenty of .NET 6 stuff going on there. So turns out there's a pretty easy fix for that. And we can do better. So first of all, what we will do in our PowerShell over here, what we will do in order to not run into any risk regarding that is, let me make a little room. So we have now the assembly name, everything is good. And now I came up with, believe it or not, my keyword is not working. What is now? The demo gods are not, now it's working again. Okay, I came up with, I think it's methods like this are going to be test and then project settings. What I will do here is, in this method I want to ensure that documentation file and or generate documentation file are present in the project. If not, I will throw an exception. So that's what I'm going to do. So there's a trick, because now comes the hard part. It's pretty easy to read JSON with PowerShell, because a lot of guys know that there is convert to JSON as a PowerShell command lot, but there is no convert to XML, I think, or it is already. So I never used it, but you can use XML without any problem. So the easy part is you just go to XML, you just flag something XML. This is one way to do it. Content, where are you? And then you say, you know what, is take the file name, which is not present. We need to have a parameter section, and we need to tell him that file name should be coming from outside. So take the file name and get its content, and then just say, interpret this as XML. This is what the brackets here are doing. This is an easy way to do it. Maybe it's even possible to say JSON. I don't know. I use this for XML all the time. But anyways, with that in place, what we will do is the property group, let's call it prop group, which contains the settings we want, is if you go to the content project, I will show you this in a second, and then property group. This is our path. So what do I mean by that? If we look into the C's project here, so it will read this as an XML, and there's one root element, which is project. This was the first part here. And then the next root element, the next element we're interested in is the element property group. So there could be, I think there's only one property group allowed, but then we have property group and we read it, and then we have a pointer to this thing. So with that in place, this is where the prop group is now living. And now we will check if the prop group has a documentation file flag. So this is pointing to this one. So you need to be very precise. Let me copy this out to be sure. If it's not now, this is what we say. In other words, if it's present. So we will return, let's say 1. 1 means, let's put it over, there is entry in the CS proj. Okay, cool. If on the other side, let's copy this, there is a generate documentation file thing, which is this one. And now we have to check, and if this thing equals to true, exactly to true when written from. So this means, in other words, I hope it's still readable. Let me zoom on. There is this thing entry in the sequence, and it is set to true, because remember, you could have it there and say, no, I don't want to have it. Then we return 2. This is what we need to keep in mind. Otherwise, we return 0. None of them is set. So this means somebody has a documentation file, and this thing needs somebody has a flag generate documentation file in it. And it shouldn't be both. Okay, so what we then do is pretty simple. We just go here and say, you know what, can we please say what kind of documentation generation do we have by going to test project settings, and we give it the file which we already have, the assembly file name, which is exactly the C's proj file. So, and then we can say if this doc type equals to 0, we just throw in another exception, which is, let me copy, I have this here already. Let's do it nice. So that's what we do. We just say, project does not generate XML documentation. Add this and or this text to the file. So that's what we say to the user. Let's check it if it's working. Ensuring found assembly, that's nice. And now we can say that in the end we say project information is set up to generate XML documentation files. This is just, okay, you're good to go. The last thing we need to do is we need to ensure that the Swagger generation is in place. So let's do a function which is called build Swagger, kind of. And let's go here and give it some a param block. The first one is we again need the file name. We then for sure need the assembly name. We also will need the API version, which needs to be generated. We also will need the modify project file flag. You will see that later, which will be a bool, not a string. And then we will see, optionally, we will have an output, which is by default bin/Swagger JSON. So this is our default output path. We put it into bin, not in any detailed variation, but only into the bin because we don't care which release was built or whatever. We don't care. So first of all, let's write out. Write host. What we're going to do is generating, what is it? I think it's better to write it uppercase, Swagger document for version. And this is going to be, let's put it here, ... and then let's say which API version are we going to build. So no new line. Thank you. So what we're going to do here is I added this if modify project file argument. And this is, let's be sure if this is true. What this means is we will create a temporary file and we will name it temp. So basically what this parameter is, if we have to do with this version, we need to do something with this value to get rid of the risk. You will see that in a second. So what we will do, we copy the actual file name to the temp file location. So we copied the C's project file to a file name -temp, .temp. Then we again read out content equals, we read now the file name, the C's project file, by getting its content. Nice. And now what we do is we change it. So we simply say .project property group, and then it was documentation file. And what this is equals, this is now bin slash, and let me copy this because I have this here on the right side, and then you can see what I'm up for. So what I'm doing is, I just tell, you know what, it might be a good idea to put it into the bin folder, wherever the default .NET location is, like target framework included, but then call it .NET-Swagger XML. So why do I do this? The simple reason is, the tool which executes here when we call Swagger to file is the tool .NET-Swagger. So this is the executing assembly, if you will, because it is a .NET tool. So in .NET 6 and others, if you only have the documentation file present, it will yell at you if you try to generate it with the original setting, which is currently in your file, because then it says, I cannot find a .NET Swagger XML, but this is the thing I need to find, because the assembly name actually is no longer what you have defined. Now I'm calling .NET Swagger calls you, and the entry assembly name is .NET-Swagger. And in that scenario, we want to change the C's project file to have a static file named .NET Swagger so that .NET Swagger knows, oh, that's my file. We're kind of tricking the build process. If you don't know what I explain here, and you will stick to .NET 8. The simple messages or 7. You don't have to do anything. If you want to support .NET 6.2, you should listen to me and put that in. And be aware, I put it in single quotes, so that is not interpreted as string interpolation in PowerShell, because I want those values to be exactly there. This is just a string which he puts in here. He just takes this thing and he will put replace this string in the file by the string I had. I did. And then all I do is I just save the content. This is what is weird about XML. You need to save the content into, and to be sure we do it this way so that we are not mixing up stuff, into the temp file. So that is what we do. And I'm not sure, is this correct? Let's see. I'm doing it into the temp file. Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to build the project, because we don't know if this ran. Write host, and by the way, we never do, can no new line here, because it's just, write host. Now we can, again, no new line, and we just say building project. Okay, no new line. So what we do is .NET build. Normally this is release mode. And then what we say is bin Swagger, because we don't want to mess up things. And we don't pwd out now. So we just coming up with a certain output folder so that we know for sure where the output is generated. We don't want to mess around to detect the target framework and then to decide where to go. We don't want to do that. No man. So what we want to do is write host done. First of all, for the building. Nice. Let's copy this because we need another step, which is now generating Swagger. So now we should have everything in place to execute our Swagger 2 file. And then this is output, is the output which we got up there, this thingy. This is a JSON output. And then we should have the bin Swagger is again our path. And then we have the assembly name we got passed in. Where are you? Let's do assembly name .dll, which is the DLL which we want. And then the passed in API version. This is exactly what we did before when we tested out the tooling, right? And then we do done. And then what we can do, if we had the modify flag on, modify project file. Let's see if I did everything. If it equals to true again, let's do move item temp file. Temp file to file name, and do it with force, because he will yell, it's already there, whatever. And then whatever we say, and I think it should be in file name, by the way, here. He should write the content to file name. That's why we backed up the project file into temp. And then we move it back, overwriting the project file again. And then temp is gone because we moved it. And then we can say write host. And then Swagger document created at, let's do it this way, output. Let's see. And then with this, we can say, you know what? Remove it, generate the Swagger. This was the question marks. Build dash Swagger. What is this? Yes, build dash Swagger. So what he wants is assembly name is just our assembly name. And I think I forgot something. Oh, we need to do that assembly name. So we are almost done. We need to do that. I forgot that. API version, let's say, is v1. Okay. The file name should be the file name. I think this is the assembly file name that we have. Wait a minute. This is our assembly file name, correct? And then we say the modify thing is depending on if the doc type equals 1. So let's do a little bit of formatting and then I explain what I did. So we can do with backticks, we can tell PowerShell, well, that's a multi-line command. So one thing, first of all, is missing the assembly name. So after we generated the assembly file name, we forgot to put in a certain way to retrieve the assembly name. I forgot to put it in by knowing the file name. So why is that important? Let's scroll a little bit up and let's generate our last function. When we have this one, we can have a function which says get assembly name. So the official name of the assembly by having as a parameter the file name. We know the file name, but now we want to know the assembly name. And I have some remarks here too. And what this is we use a .NET thingy to first of all get the file. So file is, and this is for every C# developer, you should be very familiar because, or .NET. We go here to .NET namespace and call the constructor of the file info type, passing in the file name. We do that because PowerShell is very bad in some sort of things like removing extensions and so on. So what we can do now is, first of all, we can assume that the assembly name is the file dot name. I think it's without extensions, we will see. And then again, we can read out the content of this file because we know that this is the C's project. File name, get content, but interpret this as XML. Nice. And what we can do now is the CS, the .NET assembly name, or no, CS is C's project. CS proj assembly name equals whatever content is. We go to the project, we go to the property group assembly name. And keep in mind that we do all that because it's totally legit to leave it out. So what this means, by the way, is the assembly name is the name of the C's project file. That's why we need to do all this handstands, because the C's project file will not be invalid. So if the C's project file assembly name, where are you? Here. If the C's project file assembly name length, can we have the length of you? Is not, or there is something. If this is true, then the assembly name actually is the C's project assembly name. Where is it? Okay, that's what it is, and all we need to know is return this assembly name because we have overwritten it here, and this means take the name configured in the file instead of the file name, and take the csproj file name without extension by default. Let's to be honest, let's see if we can have file equals file name. No, file name. So let's see if we say new, and if we say this is, where are we? Let's say, can we even do it this way? I'm not sure. This is API sample app csproj. I'm not sure if we, yeah, I thought so. Let's go here, let's do it, and let's see file, and let's see what file name is. This is this, and this is not a good idea. File name, replace file extension. Is file extension something? by nothing. That's better. So this is why I used it. So this should be assembly name is file name. Take the file name but replace the file extension, which is, let me show you, file extension from .NET, as you might know, is .csproj. And what we do from the name, which was the csproj init, replace it by nothing. And now we know the assembly name, and now this is going to work. If we go here and say, hey, assembly name is a get assembly name with the file name, and it looks good. I don't know, probably I have some errors. Let's do the last generate here, and let's see if we have something going on. So we have an error. File name, misspelled something. Where is it? Content is file name. Yeah, that was clear. File name. Can we have dollar file name? Where is it? Dollar file name here. Dollar file name is matching. This cannot be the culprit. This not to install no. And then I'm guessing which line is he telling me the line? 71. 71. Yeah, he doesn't know what file name is. Interesting, because it's a parameter coming in. File name. Is it in 71? Method invocation exception. 71. Content save. Yes. PWD file name. Exception calling save with one argument. File name, directory name, or volume syntax. So what are we up for? Can I check my remarks on that? Maybe just a second. Content save. PWD temp file. So this is PWD file name. Save with the file name, directory name, or volume name is incorrect. Oh, this is okay. Oh, the file name contains everything, so we need just to remove this. This is an absolute file name, which is totally okay. And then the term file name is not recognized. Where is it? File name get content in 30. Where is it? 30. We messed up this one. And this is, where is it? Here. Yeah, thank you for not having the dollar sign. You probably have seen it and did not say anything, but that's okay. The term get content is not recognized. Where is it? Get content. Did I read get content? Yes. Where is get content? Yeah, there it is. Content is okay. Get content. So 2 of 3. 2 out of 3 is not a bad. Building project. Nice. Generating Swagger. No. Interesting. What do we have here? He says e-coding at Microsoft full path whatever 100 exception find out font exception cannot find e-coding Swagger API. Here we go. E-coding API sample app service core, and this was because we probably are not going to, this is not what we're going to do. Let's try again. No. And he says, what is he saying? E-coding Swagger. Generating Swagger on a system cannot find e-coding API. Bin Swagger. Oh, bin Swagger? Where are you building this? Bin Swagger? I did this to him. Bin Swagger. Output is bin Swagger. Here you go. Please build it in bin Swagger. And please do the output in generating Swagger. And he's exactly in generating Swagger. In bin Swagger assembly name DL. And he should be fine with that. Let me see. Bin Swagger JSON, bin Swagger, assembly name DL. Could not find file. Where is it, by the way? Can we just delete this one and have a complete new start here? RMRF bin. LSA, he's again getting on my nerves. So probably I need to close the PowerShell sessions. No, probably I need to go out of this. Delete is in progress. Thanks for that. And again. So guys, is he not doing it? API sample services core cancel. Is he again? And I'm again running. It's always the same with me. Thank you. Let's do code again. Let's see if we now finally can figure this out. This is running. Let's do the generate again. And he still will fail, probably. He builds. And now what do we have? Bin. Interesting. Why is he building the debug version? But anyways. He has in .NET 8 the .NET Swagger XML. And maybe what happens if we tell him, maybe there's only one caveat here. Maybe this one is, let's try out with false this guy. Is he working then? Yes, so this version is working. He generates this, and in Swagger, in the bin, he generates the Swagger JSON. That's nice. But the output, by the way, should be something better. And I don't even know, is this possible? No. Swagger JSON, and let's say, you know what? Let's do the output as bin swagger.v1.json, as we did it before, you know. So there's only one thing. I did a mistake for the .NET 6 thingy. So this is working. We now have Swagger v1.json, exactly what we had before, right in the manual step. But now we can execute this headless, if you will. Headless meaning there are no preconditions or pre-installations needed other than .NET. So .NET must be there. Okay, that's logical because we have a .NET tooling. It's like trying to execute Python, not having Python installed. We don't discuss that. But other than that, it's headless. It's not depending on everything else. So this runs. The only caveat is that we have this issue here, which is kind of in our way. We need to fix this last thing here, and then we have a final script. So this is a .NET 6 thingy, as I told you. So whenever this is, this needs to be done. And before of that, I had the temp file here. So why is that an option? Let's test if this is now working. Oh, it's working? Why is that? So I am writing this to the temp file, which makes totally no sense, because then I couldn't have spared this the whole time. So if I'm only executing that on the temp file, I don't get the error. So I think this is correct. But this now leads to the point that he says, let's read it carefully. He says, yeah, I know. He says, under the exception, I don't know where this file is. Okay. Coding API samples bin Swagger API sample services core XML. Yes, because bin Swagger is not the location where you need to find it. It needs to be in bin configuration target framework .NET Swagger. So now he is searching it. And let me see, is temp here? Did he? Oh, we should do another thing, by the way. Another good thing in PowerShell by default, and that is what I missed, is error action preference is stop the script. So if any exception unhandled occurs, don't go any further. So let's see. Again, generator. He's generating the temp file, and now he stopped. But Swagger document generated. What? Are you kidding me? Let's remove the results. And let's see all of this. And he still does it? Okay. .NET Swagger XML. No, he does. Or bin Swagger v2 JSON. What do you mean? Can we? What are you doing? Here, regenerate the .NET Swagger XML. I like that. He's listening to us. Swagger v2 JSON. Interestingly, he generates a v2 JSON. What the hell is going on? Why is he doing that? And why v2 and not v1? This has now its own living. We created it and it's alive. Build Swagger. Where is he having the V version? The version here, where's this coming from? V2. We never did it. What? And by the way, just a quick question. Yeah, you see my face. So he's generating something, but find not found. API sample app services core XML. Yes, because it's called Swagger or .NET Swagger XML. I think the reason for that is that under .NET 8, this is not going to work. So I think I need a more sophisticated version of that, telling him that if you are Verizon version, if you are running on .NET 6, maybe it's what it is. So let's do it inside of that. Build Swagger. So that means if this is there and let's get another helper function. Function get major .NET version. So meaning this is version is .NET -- version. So what's happening when I execute this? Well, can I execute? Can I do this? Okay, nice. Can I split by point? Get the first, get 0. Is this what he wants? Yeah. And then can I return this? Can I just say return this split by dot? Hey, and get the first one. That's a dangerous thing, but anyways, so let's do this one. This is our command. So what we do now is .NET version equals get .NET major .NET version, and we just say this only is if this and major .NET version is less than 7. Let's see. And this should do the job. Generator. Obviously not. Right host, is this possible? Oh, is modify project file only if it's 1 and lower than 7. Yeah, I totally agree. False. So this should be modify project file false. Is this still working when I put in false? Or is it again throwing errors? Oh, it's again throwing errors. So this has nothing to do with our problem. Oh. because he is writing this down. Let's see what happens now. He still cannot find it. So this has nothing to do with the .NET version. It just says .NET building project generating Swagger. So he says generating Swagger now. He says could not find all of that. Can we RM the bin folder completely? Thank you. So now we do it by hand. So what we do is .NET build C release O bin Swagger, right? Bin Swagger. And here he generated this by default. Build succeeded. C program solution warning. The output option isn't supporting when building a solution. Specify solution level output paths in all projects. I'm not building a solution. But anyways, bin Swagger this. I don't know where this is coming from. First question. This is new to me. Interesting. Second of all, where is my XML? My XML still is generated in .xml. Why is it .xml? Because this is completely empty. So let me remove that. Let's try it again. Let's see what's happening. Yes, and now we have the XML file correctly. You see, it's only when this thing is there. And now he's happy. So meaning that this was exactly wrong because I had a typo here, assembly name. Let's do it again. Generator with this. Working. Still working. Okay, nice. And now I have the script in place which says, well, if it's .NET 7, can we remove this? Is it still working? Was it unnecessary, the last step? Generator. Yeah, it's not. So this is still for .NET 6 and older, because it will fail there. And then you have your Swagger, and that is it. That was the target. So let's go again. And let's check if this script actually is usable for any other app. So let's see, what do we have? If we go to, and I am going over, and now I see where this JSON comes from. He is copying over Swagger v2 JSON into the output. So rmrf bin, it's nice. And now we have a script in this folder. And I can remove, or I can move this script, which is generator, one folder up in eCoding. So now the script is gone. Let's close this. And now when I go to my coding folder, cd ... now I have the generator here and can basically tell it to go generator ps1 to execute wherever I want. So when I go to my API sample app again and I execute generator, is it doing its thing? It's doing its thing. So it still generates the Swagger in my folder. So cat bin that Swagger v whatever. And here it is. It generated this file, which wasn't there before. It's a one-step operation. So you totally can do that now in any other folder. The next thing will be to maybe, because this is a generic script, right? So code here, meaning what we do a lot in our pipelines, we have the script, and now what you can do, you can put it into basically a public GitHub repo or gist, a private gist even if you want, whatever, and then you can just download it to your pipeline whenever you need it, because it's just a few bytes, kilobytes, okay, you download, that's it, and then you execute the script, okay, that's all you need to do, and then you can reuse this in all of your pipelines, wherever you need to automatically generate Swagger JSON, which is nice, I think. So, basically, that was the whole plan, to show you that. I don't know what else to do. I will link, I will generate the gist out of that and put it into the link, so you can basically copy out all of that to your machine. And then remember, there's this little caveat with .NET 6 and older where you need to be aware of. But anyways, so no commands so far. We will see if something will arrive in the recording. I hope it was kind of entertaining. You saw me sweating a little bit. Oh, thanks, Jonathan. Thanks. See, you liked it. Cool. I hope I see you next time. I will do some live chats on a more regular basis now from now on, to do some like programming stuff, to do a little longer stuff than the recordings. So feel free to give me feedback if you want to see more of that. And with that, I want to wish you a nice evening, nice weekend, because it's Friday here today at the time of recording. Hope to see you soon. And yeah. See you later. I will now stop my stream. Have a good night, guys.